Hey everybody, I wanted to do a quick video on a big question that I had when I was coming to the Coast Guard, as well as compare some ribbon racks. So the question that I had as a prior service member was, how do I translate my ribbons to a Coast Guard ribbon rack? So I show up on day one with my best foot forward and all my accoutrements and uniforms set up correctly. So this is the Coast Guard Awards and Medals Manual. It is instruction number 1650-25 Echo. And there's a couple things that I want to highlight in here real quick before we start moving on. So prior service members is a call out. You can just control F the manual. And I want to pull out specifically marksmanship medals and ribbons. So enclosure 22 is what we're really going to be looking at. But marksmanship medals and ribbons, unless they are earned while they are in the Coast Guard, can't wear them. If we hop over to enclosure 22, this lists the order of precedence and all the authorized Coast Guard medals. So what I did is I pulled my virtual NPF or whatever you have for your branch of service, and then I printed off enclosure 22 and went through and highlighted every medal on my printout in the manual, and these are the medals that I was authorized to wear. I've gone back and I've asked OPM, the PSC, PSD for approval to wear some of these, like the Air Force Air and Space Training Ribbon or the Nuclear Deterrence, and they've denied them. So with that, it's pretty easy to say that, hey, if it's not listed here, you can't wear it on your uniform. And coming to the Coast Guard, I also wanted to kind of update my ribbon rack. And there's a bunch of different companies out there, and I can never find a good comparison of all the different ribbon racks. But having spent a lot of money on ribbons over the years, more than I'm proud to admit, I wanted to share some of those. So what I did was I went and built very similar racks at all the popular kind of rack building sites. This is Pennant. This is one that I had not heard about until I joined the Coast Guard. It's a really cool system and probably the one that I'm going to advocate the most for. So building a rack with 7 ribbons and a bunch of devices came out to $50. Something that I want to note here is that this is a magnetic rack and you actually receive 2 ribbons. Even though it says quantity 1, you receive a ribbon that has a north and a south pole polarity. We'll talk more about that in a second. I built the same thing out as a standard ribbon. These are the standard ribbons that you would buy at the exchange and just slide onto your ribbon rack. That came out to $45, and then $48 for a thin ribbon set. This is from the Easy ribbon back ribbon builder from USAMM. I went to Ultrathin, and this is probably the cheapest option at $37. However, and that's with shipping at $11, $25 for the actual ribbons. These I don't think I have shipping and taxes in yet. So Ultra Thin is still the cheapest. However, man, they need to update their site. This is painful. And then finally, the one that I've seen pop up a lot on social media is Snap Rack. This is kind of a cool concept. My problem is that once you get senior in rank, you can't support over 18 ribbons. It's also kind of expensive to get set up at $70 without taxes, shipping, or anything like that. And I can't even find all the devices that I would need as a prior service guy. Like I couldn't find the gold border for the Air and Space Expeditionary ribbon. I could probably source that through the Coast Guard Exchange or another source, but I don't know. Cool concept, especially as you're junior, but as you get more senior, you're definitely going to have a hard time with this system that you really invested a lot of money into, especially to buy the kit. I don't know if I would do this if you were more senior. However, if I was starting out, I might do it because it'll definitely hold you through unless you're just earning ribbons left and right. So with that, look at how cool that is. This is the Pennant. This is a standard ribbon that you can just slide on and off. These are going to be different representations of my ribbon racks over the years. This one's a USAMM. And then this is an ultra thin setup. So when I came to the Coast Guard, we'll say that these are my Coast Guard ribbon racks. This is one of my old Air Force ribbon racks. So this is what I had in the Air Force right up until I commissioned. It's a USAMM rack. Really no complaints. Very, very well put together. Even though it's kind of expensive at $50, man, it just looks really clean in the uniform. Whether it's on your Bravos jacket or it's on your Trops, I really like the spacing, and just it's hard to appreciate when you're talking about thin ribbons how they manage to replicate the look. I guess the depth might be the best word to use. The depth of a ribbon when it's sitting on your chest and on your uniform, while still maintaining just that clean look of being a thin ribbon. So very, very impressive. The problem is that as you update this rack, what they have to do is they have to either, one, if you add more ribbons outside of this specific backer, you can't update this. You got to go buy a whole new one at $45, $50. You can add devices. So I will say that. And sometimes they can update the rack with a ribbon, but they have to destroy all the ribbons in precedent above it. So if you're coming to the Coast Guard, a lot of your Coast Guard ribbons, like this marksmanship ribbon right here, is going to be the first ribbon on the rack. And so you would have to destroy all the way down the entire rack and just buy a totally new one. So very, very nice rack, 8 out of 10. But again, these are a healthy investment, especially if you're still earning a lot of ribbons. Would not go this route if you're planning on picking up stuff that is going to be kind of not handed out, but I would expect to see you earning within the first year, like an LO, or first couple years, like a meritorious team comm, maybe a marksmanship ribbon, an LOC, or a PCS decoration after you leave your first unit. So we'll just put this kind of off to the side here. The next one that I want to compare this against is the ultra thin. And when I was talking about that depth and that texture, you can kind of see just how much more realistic the Easy Rack looks compared to the ultra thin. And this almost looks printed on. Now, what's funny is they're both very similar, if we can get a focus, in thickness. But for some reason, the spacing on these just looks better to me than the ultra thin. Now, I'm sure ultra thin is doing a phenomenal job. Like, for as janky as their site is, wow, I really like how tight these are, especially on the Trops. I think this looks better on the Bravos. I think this looks better on the Trops. And when I say Trops, for my Air Force guys, that is your short sleeve blue shirt, no tie, name tag, ribbons, shoulder boards. Bravos jacket is your blues jacket. My critique for these is how they attached these, the pins. The command strip feels like adhesive strips. And as you can see, I've had to re-stick them on as they've come off on me. This one's shifted. That one's not shifted. So cheaper, still a great looking product. Very, very responsive customer service. I've had to have them email them to swap out this C device from the bronze to the silver. They've been phenomenal customer service. Highly recommend working with the company. I just like the texture and the look of these better. But I think if I was buying them coming into the service, I'd probably go to ultra thin if I just wanted to show up and have a ribbon rack that looks really clean day one, and save myself some money knowing that I'm going to be adding ribbons to this probably relatively soon. I will say, again, same concept. They can add devices. You can send it in. You could add devices yourself, but I would send it in probably to add devices. And if you wanted to add a ribbon, they would have to destroy everything above it to get down to that ribbon and replace it. So not a great move for somebody transitioning services, which is where we come to the standard ribbon. This is honestly just slightly cheaper than either of these options. However, I don't think it looks as good because these ribbons do shift around. You'll be walking around all of a sudden and one of them will pop out, and it's the standard ribbons that you see for everybody. And they're fine. They're perfectly in regs. They work. They just don't look as clean. So with that, I really like going and buying these ribbons pre-built from EZAMM or Ultrathin. Either one, you can order these already built on a standard ribbon, and they just do a phenomenal job of aligning everything, of centering everything. There's no super glue leaking out left or right. And I will say that Snap Rack actually has a really cool product. It's a 3D printed jig that lets you place devices perfectly on ribbons and super glue them in place, that I would highly recommend checking out. But yeah, so I went and I bought all my ribbons. So yeah, I went and bought all my ribbons. Here's one that I did myself with the device. It's just a push through, 2 pins on the back side. However, you can see how it kind of shifts a little bit in the ribbon. Not a big deal, but when you compare the alignment and the angle with the pre-built ribbons, which are perfectly aligned, I think it makes a big difference that you go and purchase these pre-built ribbons if you're going to go this way and you really want to look show up and look sharp. Just one person's opinion, neither right or wrong. Again, this is a perfectly valid option that you could definitely work with. So I put those in out of order. So let's talk about the one that I recommend now, after having used it for about a year now. We'll just kind of throw that there. This is Pennant. I really, really like this system. So I get the functionality and ability to swap ribbons of the standard ribbons with the aesthetic and the look of the thin ribbons. Now, I will say I don't have a snap rack here to compare, which would be the real comparison for a magnetic ribbon rack. So real quick, you can kind of see very, very similar in thickness to the EZAMM and the Ultrathin. That being said, what this is a magnetic plate. So this is just a giant magnet. These plates, when you get a new ribbon, cost about $7. And what it is each ribbon, rather than being wrapped and anchored in place, is removable. And you just snap it on. I will say that I do notice myself occasionally getting them rolled up if I bump this with my arm as I'm walking. However, because these are polarity, there's actually 2 different blue. Where's the red one? Blue. Okay, so this row should all be blue. That means this row should all be red. So blue and red, north and south polarity. So you actually, when you build this rack and you get it from Pennant, you get 2 ribbons. So that means that I can have a set up for my Bravos, and I can have a set up for my Trops. And I really appreciate that. I also really, really like, man, these magnets are very strong. That I can just swap out my rack and upgrade it as I need to. I can shift it around. I can move my ribbons around. I don't need to send this in and lose it for, a couple weeks while I'm waiting for it to get back. I can just order the new ribbon when it comes in. I order a new plate, snap it on, and I'm good to go. If I want one with a new device, I can send the ribbon back and get a new device, or I could add it myself. So that's Pennant. Really, really big fan of it. They did an awesome job. I like that they anchored these in with what feels like some sort of hot glue, maybe super glue, rather than the command strips of the Ultrathin. And then the same thing, they use this adhesive as well on the Easy ribbons. I will say I'm a bigger fan of the metal ribbon racks versus the plastic ones, having used both. And I said the last piece, but I'm going to kind of cheat and add some more information in here for anybody watching. So this is how I like to kind of organize all of my ribbons. I have and keep everything together. This is another ultra thin top 3 that I built. It's a little out of date at this point since I need to add some devices. For your trops, you can use these cards or cardboard or something, preferably white, to back it to keep everything. And I just wanted to talk about some things that I've picked up because I have bought the little awards manual book that everybody in the Coast Guard recommends. Not a huge fan of it. I still find myself going back to the uniform manual to check spacing. This is a neat little tool to set everything a 1/4 inch off the top of your pocket. I always keep a lighter in with my uniforms to burn off those strings, along with a pair of toenail clippers to clip those annoying little pendants or anything near polyester, because this will melt polyester. This, you can just cut off those strings. So right tool for the right job. Don't necessarily go after some of your jackets and stuff like that with a lighter. This is going to be a much better tool. Bow tie and white gloves. I have been in a couple weddings now since joining the Coast Guard, and these go with some of the uniforms. Keep random stuff. This is a cool little kit that I bought from Amazon. It is lapel pin rubber, and I have been replacing every one of my dammits with these little rubber backers. Way better than these things. Love them. They're super nice. I can't remember how much this was. It was a pack of 50 though, and every one of my devices and my ribbons has it now. These are great little Craftsman toolboxes, just something to kind of keep everything organized and make it moving around because, hey, you're going to have a lot of stuff. I will add that I typically keep a sewing kit as well in my in these kits. And looking through my Air Force One here, I have another ribbon rack that I built. This is a EZAMM as well. You can buy these staggered depending on the size of your jacket and the appropriate size so that the jacket only covers, I believe it's the top half of the ribbon. But again, this is a cool little thing. I don't like these plastic ribbon racks. They're just a little bit too flexible and they don't conform as well to the body as the metal ones. If I'm wearing the standard ribbons, I do really like how these have a little bit of a curve to conform to the chest. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate all your time. Hopefully this was informative. I'm going to tag this for Coast Guard members, but I'm also going to tag this as a comparison, and that will make a great framed shot of these ribbon racks because I just can't find one online. Talk to you later.